10.
On the heartland basis.
Send somebody
We
home.
can count the rabbis.
Okay,
Yes,
four-
well,
at
that-
that time,
that's so
4
good.
banks
When
had
I had my
that
first
now,
pulpit,
they're-
and we were only counting men, this was back in 1980.
We'll try
Somebody
to-
had yard site. They waited and waited and waited, and finally the 10th man came in. They said, "Oh, we can daven now. We have 9 men and the rabbi." So yeah, I kind of gave up. I became a eunuch for my job. All right, Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos. I'm really excited, not only to see you lovely people, but also because we are done with Deuteronomy. We are certainly done with Leviticus. We're in Genesis, yay! And Genesis is really where it all begins, all the dysfunctionality, all people not paying attention to instructions, things like that. And Noah is a sterling example of that sort of person. Now, did Noah really exist? I couldn't tell you. We had lunch this afternoon, and I said, you may not really exist. He said, oh, then I'm not picking up the check. Okay, so I have here in my hand, I have Noah, I have Gilgamesh, who's an all-time favorite, and Atrahasis. Atrahasis is a new guy for me. The gist of these 3 people is that Noah was not an original work. It drew upon other traditions. In the case of Gilgamesh and Atrahasis, there were myths. And my column this Shabbat deals with comparing the 3 of them, sort of a trialogue. And the point being that when I was a kid in yeshiva, they always said to us, Noah, the difference between Noah and the other flood stories is that Noah is a moral figure. I don't really think so, and we're going to take a look at his story. I mean, he's our guy. He's not Jewish. Judaism hasn't been started yet. That's going to be next week when God tells Abraham, Lech Lecha, which means get out of your own country. That's first Ur of the Chaldees and afterwards Haran, and go to a land which I will show you. 2 verses later, Abraham is in Canaan. And that is a miracle of fast movement. After all, how long did it take the Israelites to get there some 1,000 years later? 40 years. Abraham does it in 2 verses. It's amazing. Well, what happens is that shortly after Adam and Eve, or it's not shortly after, we don't know, because time in the Torah is very flexible. There was an Anglican divine. There was an Englishman who was a priest in the Anglican Church. His name was Bishop James Ussher, and he performed the, shall we say, pseudoscientific feat of taking all the ages of all the begats and all the ages of the patriarchs, and he subtracted them, and he decided that, I don't have the real date in my head, it's not worth remembering, but the creation began on June 3rd, 3762 BCE at 9 o'clock in the morning. Which makes a lot of fundamentalists very happy because they know.
Is that Eastern Standard Time?
Well, I don't know. Well, see, that's the thing. Maybe it was Greenwich Mean Time because he was an Englishman. 40 years English. And we'll never really know. The fact is that you don't take the dates literally. A date has symbolic value. But at this point, we've gone from Adam and Eve and their, shall we say, star-crossed progeny. Who are their boys? Adam and Eve. Cain and Abel. What does Cain do for a living, other than homicide? He's a farmer. And Abel is a shepherd. And who's the firstborn? Cain. And Abel is the lastborn. So it follows that Abel punches all the right buttons. Buttons. Where God is concerned, because not only is he a shepherd, he is also the baby of the family. God prefers. Now, all over the Torah you see primogeniture. The firstborn is the blessed one. Who are my firstborns? Okay, all right. The lastborn, actually it's the lastborn who carries away the glory. Lastborn? Okay. Also, if back in the day, and I'm not being, chauvinistic, if you were Jewish and a male and the baby of the family, oh my God, woo, you were the prince.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Now, this is not altogether
I
true.
never had a crown, though.
Yes, but I was 11 years old and I had to go out to work. I was giving out copies of the Lower East Side Democrat. They paid me 20 stories and I got $1 a section, not a story. Okay. Well, anyway. Getting back to this, so Cain and Abel both worship God. They bring offerings. and Cain brings fruit. I know that the popular belief is that it was rotten fruit. Come on, Cain is not a fool. He's not going to try and fool God into accepting bad fruit. On the other hand, Abel brings him the firstlings of the flock, the tenderest lambs and sheep and goats and whatnot. And at this point, God is totally carnivorous. God is just like when you walk by a neighbor's house and they're having a barbecue, even if you are a vegan, and I do support vegans. I myself am a vegan, except when there's meat around. And you smell the meat and your mouth waters. This is a normal human reaction. Well, God is the same way. So this is what happens, and God says to Cain, in his biblical fashion, he says, "Why art thou wroth, and why has thy face fallen? If thou doest badly, sin lieth at the door, but thou canst overcome it." Which is a terrible knock to Cain. All he did was put some peaches and apples into a box and say, "Hey, God, here you go." God says, "Well, I can't eat apples." It doesn't agree with me. But what happens? Well, Cain kills Abel. He's jealous of him. And then God appears once again. And God has a gift for asking obvious questions. He says, "Where is your brother Abel?" And Cain says, "I know not. Am I my brother's keeper?" He says, "You have killed your brother, and his blood cries out to me from the earth." And he says to Cain, "From this point on, you're going to be a wanderer on the earth." And Cain says, "Look, I'm the first one to pull a homicide here. Creation is still fairly new. Anyone who sees me will kill me." Good shots. And God says, "I will put a mark on you so that people will see my mark and they will not kill you." So the mark of Cain is not a bad thing. The mark of Cain is a life-saving device. Well, Cain goes off to the land of Nod in the east of Eden, and Cain knew his wife. Excuse me? There were 4 people last I counted. Where did Mrs. Cain come from? Did somebody pull a creation in the next county? That is actually a question which Clarence Darrow asks William Jennings Bryan in Inherit the Wind, that great play. Well, again, it's the Torah. It's not literature, modern or otherwise. It's not going to give you any more information than you need to know. So where she came from, it doesn't really matter. Also, the idea that he lives in the land of Nod, it's not winking and blinking and Nod. Nod in Hebrew means wandering. He is condemned to be a wanderer for the rest of his life because of this terrible sin of fratricide that he committed. Well, we fast forward to Noah, and I am fascinated by Noah. I don't think he's an admirable character by a long shot. But first we have to see the predecessors to the Noah story from which Noah, well, whoever wrote Noah, took a leaf. Because for starters, you should know, if you don't know already, there was a terrible, generally, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers were like the Nile. They rose on a yearly basis, and they irrigated the land, and this was Mesopotamia, the land between the 2 rivers. However, in the year 2000 something 94 BCE, there was a terrible flood, and that was the source of all of these flood myths. The earliest one is the Epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is a mighty warrior. He's similar to Hercules, and his fame is such that they put him in a comic book, which I think is about as high as you can get with a mythological character. Well, it seems that Gilgamesh is involved in a... Well, first off, he has this, not romance, it's a, what is it, a bromance? You know, when 2 guys are extremely fond of each other, a little short of, you know what? Not that there's anything wrong with this. Okay, so anyway, he falls in love with a satyr. He's either a satyr or a centaur. A satyr, for those of you not familiar, is a man from the waist up and a goat from the waist down. For example, Pan, the god of nature, he's very popular in Greek mythology. And Enkidu is either that, or he's a centaur, which of course is a man from the belly button up and a horse from the waist down. And you could see those in Fantasia. Remember the movie Fantasia by Walt Disney? Okay. So anyway, Enkidu comes to town, and first he and Gilgamesh have a great battle, and then they become fast friends, and then Enkidu becomes sick. And first, Gilgamesh tries to heal his friend by singing him the sacred song of Enkidu. I always look forward to doing that every year. as sung by Jerry Durante. Jimmy Durante.
Jerry was his brother.
Yes, Jerry and Jimmy. Okay. Well, Gilgamesh finds out, he talks with various gods, and they say, if you want to heal your friend Enkidu, you've got to go visit Utnapishtim. He is the Babylonian Noah. And I think if you're going to be a Noah, you've got to have the name Utnapishtim, because it's a very wet name, if you know what I'm saying. So Gilgamesh goes off, and he hobnobs with Gilgamesh. I'm sorry, with Utnapishtim, he says, I understand you survived a major flood. Now, this is not a universal flood. Okay, when we were out in Arizona this summer, Ann Beth and I, if you notice, if you look at the mountains, you'll see striations, which is a fancy way of saying the bathtub ring left by the glacier. That is not part of Noah's flood. Noah's flood was a totally localized kind of thing. Well, in the case of Utnapishtim, he says, what happened was, we humans were having a big party, and you know how those parties can get. They get very noisy, and the gods are trying to have a nap. So they said, let's get rid of these humans, and they decide to send the flood. Is there anything moral about that? Noisy neighbors? Shouldn't you bang on the radiator or call the superintendent or something, okay, to get rid of the noise? Well, they don't do that. They send the flood instead. Utnapishtim is told in plenty of time, get 2 of every kind of animal, sound familiar? Take them on your ark, and everything will be fine. So he gets the sacred herb or the sacred flower, Gilgamesh does, and he goes back through much peril and swimming underwater for a great deal of the time, but he's a warrior, he can do these things. And he comes back, and sadly, he's very tired apparently from swimming underwater, so he lies down near a sacred tree to take a drimble, that is a little nap, and while he is asleep, a traitorous serpent, which lives in the tree, again, sound familiar, comes down and steals the flower. So Gilgi has to go back flowerless, and his friend dies, which is very unfortunate, but it gives him a chance to sing a poem that goes on for about 3 pages. Well, that's the Epic of Gilgamesh, okay? And now we fast forward to our friend Noah. There's really no difference. I mean, except that Gilgamesh throws in the tree and the serpent and that kind of thing. And Noah is the only hit. When you were a kid and the teacher was absent and you had a substitute, did everybody behave?
No.
No. But there was always one kid who was the stooge, the patsy, and she was the one that the teacher appointed as a monitor. In case the teacher had to leave the room for a couple of minutes, the monitor took over, and what did she write on the blackboard?
Who was good and who was bad?
The bad list.
Just a bad list.
You've got to get off the bad list, because you know what happens later on. It goes on your permanent record. Remember when they talked about your permanent record? There you are, applying for college, applying for a job, and the HR guy is looking through your files. Oh, this looks good, this looks good. Wait! What's this about your permanent record? Were you on the bad list in Mrs. Yakin-Floster's class in the 3rd grade? See, I think of Noah the same way. I mean, everybody else is misbehaving, and he is the stooge. He's okay. Okay, now the rabbis like to do a comparison. Could you compare Noah and his generation, with everybody being evil and sinful, to Abraham and his generation, when people were like now, mediocre? Can you compare the two? Who is the greater person? Starts with an A, ends with a ham.
Abraham.
Abraham, of course. Noah, on the other hand, was, when everybody's misbehaving, you either go along with the crowd, or it's relatively easy to shine by sucking up to the teacher, as students have done in years past and will continue till the end of time. So Noah is chosen by God, and God appears to him in a dream and says, build me an ark. And of course, Bill Cosby, before he lost his mind, did a very nice shtick about this. It's 8,000 cubits by 600 cubits by whatever. If you want to see the ark, it's in Tennessee. All the cool stuff is in Tennessee. There's an amusement park with a life-size model of the ark. There are pictures, you can Google it. And I don't know who built this thing, but they are so thrilled. Yes, Noah moved to Tennessee. It's very clear. That accounts for the accent.
Yes.
And Okay, is it Gatlinburg? Have you been?
I've walked past it. I didn't take the time to go into it or anything.
Oh.
I just noticed it.
So what are they charging to go
I
in
have
the ark?
no idea.
Now, there's nothing you can do in that ark. There are no cardboard cutouts. There are no life-size animals. All you can do is tap dance. There's really not a heck of a lot there. And they really think people are going to start flocking to see the non-Noah's Ark, or the Noah's not, no, it's an ark, but it's non-Noah. Okay, well, so he builds the thing. Now, how big is a cubit? Extra credit question. Very good. Yes, it is from the tip of your middle man to the edge of your end of your elbow, and it's generally 3 feet, but not on little Polish arms like me. On the other hand, I have regular sized hands. And no, see, there you go.
Yeah.
Now you're closer to
Yeah.
it.
18 inches.
3 feet. What do you say?
Yeah, but that's not 3 feet.
Well, you know, my
18.
cubit and LeBron James's cubit are a little bit different.
About
So I would-
18, 20.
18, 20 inches?
Something like
Yes, and the amazing thing is not that,
you want.
yeah, the rest of the world is doing centimeters and millimeters and meters, and we here in America are still doing a cockamamie thing that was left over from the royal cubit, okay? We don't do cubits, but we do inches and feet. When I was in Israel, this is so primitive. You had to, if you went to get an extension cord, I needed an extension cord. And it had round plugs. Do they have that in Europe still? Round plugs?
Mhm.
So I went to the electrical store, not the electronics store, this is way before electronics, and I asked the guy to make me a kav chashmal, an electric cord. And he says, ezo meter, how many meters do you want? I said, shalosh metrim. So I ended up with an extension cord. It really wasn't that helpful. All right, so Noah builds the ark. And how long did it take him to build the ark? It was a slow process because he was definitely not handy and there was nothing online, ark, building.
But he lived 900 years, so I guess he could take
Yes,
time.
good. Thank you, Joe. Why did he take all that time to build the ark? Well, the theory was that his neighbors would be walking by. What?
Couldn't get along to buy the stuff.
No, he had to apply for a federal grant, and they said we have no money. Well, anyway, the idea was that people would stop him as he was building and say, "Hey, Noah, what you doing?" So that he could tell them, "Oh, you better repent, and maybe I'll find a place for you in this enormous ark if we can all make it to Tennessee, and that way you'll save yourself." He didn't do a thing. Shah still, okay, at Tzaddik in pelts. Okay, do you know that expression? It's Tzaddik in furs. Okay, it's a cold winter's day, such as we never get here in Florida. And in those days, if you were cold, what did you sit next to? 1, your mother-in-law. 2, a fire. Or 3, I don't know, a firehouse. Okay,
Fire.
a fire. So the tzaddik in pelts, the righteous man in furs, is the one who sits by the fire. He's all covered up in his furs. He's comfortable. Maybe he had a little schnapps before he sat down, and it's wonderful. The other one, the real tzaddik, the real righteous person, is out there in the street helping his fellow human beings. You don't want to be a tzaddik in pelts. Well, that was Noah. Noah was righteous, but he was keeping it to himself. It was definitely not a good thing. Well, 2 traditions, 7 or 2. What did Noah get 2 of? The animals came in 2 by 2, the elephant and the kangaroo. Okay? All the treif animals, right.
2 by 2.
It has never been reported that they sacrificed an elephant in the Holy Temple. Okay? There's just too much elephant to go around. So they only use kosher animals. What are kosher animals? They have to have a split hoof.
Expensive.
They have to chew their cud. Yes, expensive animals. Like the petting zoo at the Bronx Zoo. I told you about the petting zoo. My mother took me there. I was 7 years old. And she bought me for a dime. It wasn't even a quarter then. A handful of goat chow, such as goats love. I sniffed it myself. It really was not appealing to me. And I'm standing there like a yutz, holding my little palmful of goat chow. One of the goats came over. He hooked his feet in my belt, and he hoisted himself up, and he said, "You better fork over that goat chow, Jack. You don't get it out of here with your nose." Since that time, I have tried to stay away from 4-legged animals. Right. There were no chickens in the petting zoo, interestingly. All right, so 7. He brings 7 of all the kosher animals. Why did he bring 2 of the kosher animals, which is another thread in the story? Because everybody, if he ever, after the flood, if he sacrificed Elsie and Elmer, he'd wipe out a species. No steak, no cheese, no milk. Very sad. So that's what he did. 7 kosher animals, 2 treif animals. And here comes the flood. And the flood carries on for 40 days and nights. Anybody see that horrible movie with Russell Crowe as Noah? Well, that's the true secret of the flood story. They bored the people to death. So it was long and it was unnecessary. All right. So he gets out of the... first we do the raven-dove thing. Ravens are sacred birds, okay? They are the messengers between God and people. That is, if you're a Native American or nearly every other culture besides the Jews. In our story, in the Noah story, the raven comes off very badly. In Edgar Allan Poe's poem, the raven comes off pretty well. Once upon a midnight, dreary night.
Nevermore.
Nevermore. Yes, that's the raven's name. I have it on a T-shirt. Okay, I'm just not allowed to wear it in public. It's got a raven, a little line from the poem. So he releases the raven. Raven never comes back. Raven's got a very short role in the story. But now we're dealing with doves. Who doesn't love a dove? Love a dove? You like doves?
Oh, yeah. That's how they're cooked.
They're good eaters.
Yes.
Dove soap is good.
Dove soap, yes, it floats. Noah takes a bar of dove soap and he says, "Bring me back word," and the soap floats away and that's it. All right. So he lets the dove go and the dove comes back. See, doves are much better than ravens if you're Noah-ish. And he lets him go again. And because, you see, the dove kept coming back because it found no shelter for the sole of her foot in which she could build a nest and raise a family, assuming that Mr. Dove would show up eventually. And eventually, 3 times he lets it go, 3rd time it doesn't come back. And from this, Noah figures out that what? A, no more doves. B, what?
Found a nesting place.
Found a nesting place, yes. Probably Central Park near the peninsula. All right. I'm sorry, Joel?
So then there must be land.
There must be land. And the ark settles. He lets all the animals go. But of course, he makes some sacrifices. He says, "Come here. Cow, come here." The cow says, "Oh, I know what you're doing. I saw that box of matches." Anyway, everybody's gone. And now he's bored. So he becomes Noah the husbandman. He plants a vineyard. And he grows grapes, which is what you generally do in a vineyard. And he distills wine, and he drinks the wine. And what happens when he drinks the wine?
He gets drunk.
He gets drunk. He's the first person in the Bible to get drunk. And he's lying in the tent, and you know how it is? I don't do this, but some people, they drink and they get all hot. And they remove from themselves any encumbrance to their cooling off, this being several thousand years before air conditioning. Well, he's lying in the tent, and I didn't tell you about Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Mm-hmm. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Shem is the ancestor of all of us Semitic types. That's us and the Arabs. Ham is the ancestor of all the African American folk. It's really, this is the racist portion of the story. And Japheth is the ancestor of all the European people. Yes. Are there any Asians in the story?
No.
Native Americans?
No.
Inuits?
No.
Why not? Because it's a Middle Eastern story. They don't know. It's like, oh, hey, who are you? Oh, I'm an Inuit. Oh, I'll put you in. What do you want, blubber? Okay, there were no seals on the ark. Maybe they were.
Where'd you get the kangaroos? They came all the way from Australia.
Yes, they got them all, Joel. They just left out the unicorn. Okay, yes, ma'am.
But can't we regard Noah as a hero in
his day?
Because God chose him to save. I mean, if it's a myth or not a myth, but isn't he really one of our heroes?
Yes, in a relative way.
Relatively.
I would rather have lunch with Abraham and certainly Moses.
Oh, yeah.
One day I'm going to meet Moses.
Yeah.
Really.
Not yet.
Okay, somebody's banging on the door. Okay.
Thank you.
Some brave person of the masculine.
Go with us.
There we go.
Here comes the posse.
There we go. All right. Take no prisoners.
Is this something new?
And he sees his father is naked, and he does nothing. He walks out and tells his brothers. Now, this is, again, thousands of years before the locker room was invented. Okay.
Nobody attacking?
No.
Okay.
They know.
on.
It's a familiar face.
Okay, I must look.
This is good.
Please stand by.
Arthur!
Hello, Arthur. I gotta go. I'm working. I'm shaking your hand. Okay.
Arthur Schwartz?
Hi, I'm back. Yes. All right. Well, so Ham comes out of the tent and he tells his two brothers, Shem and Yafet, again the Jew and the.
Start at the beginning.
Yes, I'm going to roll the clock back 20 to 30 minutes. Okay. It's a shame. I was really hot, Arthur. I was on fire.
High.
Okay.
I heard it.
All right. Anyway.
And I looked at it.
They say they come in, and the way they come in, which is meant to be respectful, is they pick up a blanket and they walk in backwards, which is harder than it looks when you're doing it with somebody else. And they cover Papa, who is naked and drunk. And then Noah sobers up. And does he thank his boys? Yes, he does. He says, "Cursed shall Ham be, he shall serve his brethren," which sadly was used as an excuse for pardoning slavery for hundreds of years. It's very sad. Yes, sir.
The story that I heard, the blanket did not keep him warm, so they brought in a virgin, a harlot, to keep him warm. That's the story that I heard.
That's King David. Why can't they bring in a respectable girl and she'll watch him from across the room? Okay. All right.
So glad you joined us.
Thank
Welcome
you.
back, Arthur.
But now, so
Yes.
how did the other animals that he didn't take come back?
Which animals?
Well, there had to be other animals around.
He may have had a problem with the platypus, but he definitely got the kangaroo by UPS and several other animals. Any other animals here? Yes. The kids asked me, they used to ask me this in Hebrew school, "Rabbi, were there dinosaurs on the ark?" And I would say, "Sure." But you can't do that. You can't mix science and, dare I say it, mythology.
Dinosaurs
Look.
were way.
I'm sorry?
The dinosaurs were way alone before that.
Yes, but he didn't even think of bringing the saber-toothed tigers, because they're nasty. Well, anyway, what else happens? Let's see. Everybody on earth speaks one language. This is the Torah's only attempt to explain human linguistics. And they say, okay, because we all speak the same language and we're bored, we are going to build a mighty tower, and it will reach up to the heavens, and we will be able to hobnob with God and the angels. What do you think God thinks of this?
Doesn't like it.
Right. Now, I remember in the Bible, in the beginning, that movie from 1969. I'm sitting there in the dark with Michael Reich, who was a born-again Jew, a Baal Tshuva. He had rediscovered Orthodoxy. And we're watching all the swirling colors with state-of-the-art 1969 CGI. It wasn't CGI. And he stands up and goes, "Rashi agrees with this." I'm thinking, okay, sit down, eat your popcorn. He didn't eat the popcorn. I ate the popcorn. He was too kosher for it. But what happens is every human being on earth pitches in. They bake bricks, which I think they're still doing today. I do not do this personally. And they're building this tower. And in the movie, Nimrod is an evil man. You could tell because he's wearing eyeshadow. Okay? Apparently in 1969, that's what they did.
That was it.
He takes his bow and his mighty arrow, and he shoots the bow and the arrow up into the clouds just to poke God. Okay? So God says, "This is not good. I got to do something about this. I will think." Think. Well, yeah, that works later on, but here you got the entire planet speaking the same language and communicating and getting along and pitching in on joint construction projects. God says, "We'll put a stop to this." And he confuses their language. But the word Babel, does not mean Babel. It doesn't mean the Babel of languages. Babel is a reference to Babylon. Bab means the gate of the great god El. You'll notice the Babylonians are gone, but who calls their god El these days? Or Elohim? Or Eloheinu?
We do.
Yes, we do. See, what is beautiful about being Jewish is we take things from vanished civilizations and we adopt them as our own. It's called syncretism. But it's just a wonderful tendency that we have. Anyway, that's the story of Noah. Any questions? We're going to start with Abraham next week. And I'll say this. Moses, I got down. Moses, I know him from before he's born. Abraham, I don't meet until he's just retired from the Ur of the Chaldees Chamber of Commerce. And it bothers me a little, because he's a very mysterious figure for me. I cannot forgive him for the sacrifice of Isaac, which thankfully did not happen, and he's got other issues as well. I think his wife is a much more upright kind of person. But we'll have a good time with him. Because the thing about literary characters, and Torah characters in particular, is that we change. Our lives change. Our outlook changes, but they don't. Okay? It's like John Keats's Ode on a Grecian Urn. The urn, the figures on the urn are static. They never change. But we are always changing, developing, hopefully learning, and all that good stuff. Anyway, I'm sorry to say our cantor is not here. He is up in Boston, where I'm sure it is much colder than it is here. And right now we're going to light the candles. Okay? Yvonne, would you like to do the honors? All the ladies go in this direction.
We just sit on a regular chair.
Okay, we wave our hands over the candles. We're bringing Shabbat. We cover our eyes and do the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, le'adlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'mitzvotav. Yitzivanu v'tzivanu le'adlik ner. Yitzivanu v'tzivanu le'adlik ner. Yitzivanu v'tzivanu le'adlik ner. Shel Shabbat. Amen. Please turn to the person next to you. When people coming. Okay. Shake hands with the people next to you. Yes, it's a high trick.
Good Shabbos, my sweet.
Shabbos, sir, thank you. Thank you for vetting the door.
Vetting the door. I didn't vet it.
I vet the door.
You'll have to dry it off.
Never mind.
Yeah,
Shabbos.
did they, after what Cain did to Abel, and just punished by wandering around, nothing he was ever spoken by God or anything terrible?
We don't know. He walks out of the story, and any theories we may have, because he's no good Shabbos. He taught the lesson, and he's gone. Chief rabbi. Chief rabbi? Chief. I'm not chief, but I can be head.
Chief.
Okay.
How did Noah have three sons of different cultures?
Is that amazing? How did Noah have 3 sons of different races, cultures, ethnic groups?
He was busy.
Busy guy. It's the Torah.
He traveled a lot.
We don't know.
How many wives?
It was
He was an art salesman.
You
That's a
can
very
never-
good
you
question.
can never-
Okay.
We don't know.
I travel a lot.
And on the back.
Don't go there. I don't know how long.
That's a good question.
I really should pay attention.
Yeah.
Shabbos offer.
Yeah.
Shabbos.
I had the concubines.
Oh, good. Okay.
Who knew?
All right, thank you for coming. I have a prayer book. I miss the cantor. He's a very talented man.
But you wouldn't
He's a
think to be
tool also.
100 years old, he'd be that good anymore.
I'm glad people have curiosity about old Noah.
Yeah, she was blessed.
Page 13. Shalom Aleichem Malachei Hasharet Malachei Elyon Mimelech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lachem Shalom Malachei Hashalom Malachei Elyon Mimelech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon. Bimelech, Malachei Hamlachim, Akadosh Baruch Hu. Continuing now. On 14, you did Nefesh. We'll do it in English. Soul, loving God, compassion, gentle source, take my disposition and shape it to your will. Like a darting deer, will I rush to you before your glorious presence. Humbly will I bow. Let your sweet love delight me with its thrill, because no other dainty will my hunger still. Lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 yalla, lie, 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 lie. The L'chadar D is on page 21. L'chadar D l'ikrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nikabela. L'chadar D l'ikrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nikabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibur echad, Ish mi'anu el ha'miuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo echad, L'shem u'tiferet v'litila, L'chadar D l'ikrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nikabela. L'krat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Yimekor ha'bracha, Ve'rosh mikedem l'sucha, Salaseh ma'shabat tefila, L'chadar D l'ikrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nikabela. Continuing on 22, please rise, face the door through which the Sabbath Queen will enter. Boi v'shalom ater malach, Adam v'simcha u'tzara, Tov erunei am sigulam, Boi chala, L'chadar D l'ikrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nikabela. Please remain standing for the Baruch Hu, which is on page 28. And I'm going to ask the Yevskis to honor us by opening the Ark.
That's 28.
I'll give you my book.
Thank you.
My book opens up magically.
I see.
You got a connection.
New message is received from Augie.
Mormons would be the magic underground.
You're connected. You guys.
Yes, yes, you opened that up.
Sacred underground.
All right. Thank you so much. We bow towards the Ark. Baruch Hu Adonai Habarah. Baruch Adonai Habarah. Le'olam Bo'ed. Amen. The curtain is closed. And you may be seated. Thank you so much. Let's take a look at 29 on the left-hand side, below the line. The Torah is a tapestry. Together, the Torah is a tapestry that can adorn the days in which we dwell. Let us embrace it and make it our own. Weave its text into the texture of our lives. Its teachings sustain us. Its beauty delights us when we open our eyes to its splendor. It is not a mystery far beyond reach. It is not in heaven beyond our grasp. It is as close to us as we allow it, on our lips, in our heart, integral to our deeds. Let us study its words, fulfill its commands, and make its instruction our second nature. It is the tangible gift of God's love. Weave its text into the texture of your lives. Page 30, the Shema, we cover the eyes. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Uncover the eyes. Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto Leolam Voed. We'll read together, you shall love Adonai. You shall love Adonai your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words which I command you this day you shall take to heart. Teach them diligently to your children, and recite them at home and away, night and day. Bind them as a sign upon your hand, and as a reminder above your eyes. Inscribe them upon the doorposts of your homes and upon your gates. Continuing now on page 32, in the middle. Malchuto bratzon kiblo alehem, Moshe v'nei Yisrael achanu shira, Simcha rabba v'yamru chulam, Ichamocha v'helim Adonai, Ichamocha nedor b'kodesh, norati lo tosef eleh, Malchutcha rovanecha bokeh yam lefnei Moshe, Seli anu v'yamru, Adonai yimloch le'olam bo'ed. Be'nemar kifad Adonai et Yaakov, u'gi'alo mi'ad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Go'al Yisrael. Amen. Top left on 33. As we know, this is the prayer we do for folks in need of Refu'ahShelemah, a quick and speedy recovery. We're thinking about all the folks out there. I'm sorry to share with you that Howard Shulman is not well. He may have had a stroke. So we pray for his recovery, very young man, and our prayers go forth to his loving mother, Rona. So now let's go around, and if there's someone you know, Jewish, Gentile, relative, anyone at all. Yes. Refu'ahShelemah. Refu'ahShelemah. Well, I always say God knows who they are. So Refu'ahShelemah. Arthur, anybody? Refu'ahShelemah. Okay, yes, sir, Joel.
Laura Grant.
Yes, Refu'ahShelemah. Jules, anybody?
Eugene Latowski.
Refu'ahShelemah. Yes.
Mandy Wexler.
Refu'ahShelemah.
Martin Baker.
Refu'ahShelemah.
Bob Hilla.
Refu'ahShelemah.
And Tony Dugina.
Refu'ahShelemah. Thank you.
We have an addition.
Oh, yes, sir.
My brother Peter Goodman.
Refu'ahShelemah. Okay, yes.
Seraphina Klein,
Refu'ahShelemah.
Cy Sperling.
Refu'ahShelemah. Yes, Stuart.
James Bassmagy.
Refu'ahShelemah. And of course, as always, we pray for our brave troops protecting our country all over the world and our brothers and sisters in the embattled state of Israel. Let's read together the English paragraph, top left, 33. Help us, Adonai, to lie down in peace, and awaken us again, our sovereign, to life. Spread over us your shelter of peace. Guide us with your good counsel. Save us because of your mercy. Shield us from enemies and pestilence, from starvation, sword, and sorrow. Remove the evil forces that surround us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings, O God, who watches over us and delivers us, our gracious and merciful ruler. Guard our coming and our going. Grant us life and peace, now and always. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Praise you, Adonai, who spreads the shelter of peace over us, over all his people Israel, over Jerusalem and the entire world. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, Baruch atah Adonai, aporei sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim, v'al kol ha'olam kulo.
Amen.
34, the Shamru. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat Lidor Tamerit Olam Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat Lidor Tamerit Olam Heinu vein b'nei Yisrael Oti li'olam Oti li'olam Oti li'olam Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat Lidor Tamerit Olam Uvayom hashvi Shabbat v'inafash Shabbat v'inafash Shabbat v'inafash Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat Lidor Tamerit Olam. Please rise, have Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. Amen. Yalmad yivrach hirute v'yamlich mahalchute v'chayechon u'yomechon u'chayech chol beit Yisrael b'gala b'gala u'vizman kariv dimeru amen. Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Yolam Yomel Maya Yitbarach V'yishtabach Yitpoar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh Yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Dekudesha B'richu Li'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tush bechata v'nechemata Tamiran b'yalma B'yimaru Amen. The Amidah 35b, and it concludes on page 38, after which you may be seated.
way now. He's gonna think it's not religion. Middle. He had to go. Here he comes.
Never had a rabbi run out of us.
There you go.
Not over yet, neither.
As long as he comes back.
Not over yet.
Sorry, I know I should have had those garlic rolls. It wasn't my fault.
Okay.
I wrote his name on the chalkboard.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right, page 48 is the full Kaddish. It Gadal V'Kadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yomadi Brachirute V'Mlich Machute. V'Chai Chon V'Mechon V'Chai L'Chol Beit Yisrael. Agalav Zman Kariv Imru. Amen. Yeshmei Rabbah Mevorach. Yolam Yom Mayon. Yitbarach. Yitbarach V'Yishtabach V'Poar V'Truma V'Yitnaseh. V'Tadar V'Taleh V'Talal Shmei D'Kodesha B'Refu V'Elam En Kol B'Chatza V'Shirata Tush B'Chatza V'Nachmata Damiran V'Alma V'Yimru Amen V'Kabal Tzlo Tono V'Utan D'Chayis Rogadam V'Mina V'Shmaya V'Yimru Amen Yehi Shlam Araba Min Shemaya V'Chaim Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael V'Yimru Amen Use Shalom B'Mrava Uyase Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael Imru Amen Yase Shalom Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael Yase Shalom Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael Imru Amen. All right, please rise. We have the Kiddush for Shabbat on page 49.
This the real. On this side is the real stuff. This side is the. I wrote the W in wine. This is juice.
Juice?
Wine. Juice.
It's not going to hurt you.
Wine.
Okay, I'll take the wine.
Okay. Savri Marnan Rabbanan Rabbatai Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Borei Pri Hagafen Amen Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher Kiddushanu B'mitzvotav V'rotzah Lanu V'Shabbat Kodsho B'Yavav V'rotzah Nitli Lanu Zikaron L'Maseh V'Reishit Ki hu yateh le'olam v'krai kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim Ki banu v'charta v'tanu kidashta mikol amim v'shat kodshecha v'yavahu ratzon inchaltanu Baruch Atah Adonai V'kadesh HaShabbat Amen. Chaim L'Shalom Simchas. Very nice. Okay, we're good. Let's do the Aleinu, page 51.
Is it time yet?
Okay. Let's see. Arthur, would you honor us by opening the ark? During the psicha, as it were. One more. I want to thank Mr. Arthur Schwartz for coming all the way from Middle Village, Queens, just to be with us tonight. It'll be rough driving back.
And all the tolls.
Right. Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adonai kol B'seis gula yotzei b'reishit
Shalom Asanu Knoye Haratzot Elo Samanu Mishpachot Adama Shalom Samal King Gahem Igor Aleinu Dechal Amonam Banach Mekorim Mishtachavim Umodim Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlokim HaKadosh Baruch Hu She'ulot Shamayim v'Yaser Haaretz Moshe Bikaro v'Shamayim Imal Tushmin Atuzo B'Kavei Miromim Hu Eloheinu Echad Emes Malkeinu Efes Ulaso Hakatu B'Torato V'Adatayom V'Hashevotav El Mamlecha Ki Adonai Hu Elohim B'Shamayim Imal V'Haaretz
As the ark is closed, if you're not saying Mourner's Kaddish, you may be seated. Otherwise, the Mourner's Kaddish is on 52. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, Amen. Yalmad yibrach yirutei v'yich machutei. V'chayechon v'mechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. Magalau v'zman koriv v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah v'rorach li'olam u'leil mayor. Yitbarach v'yishabach v'yitba'ar v'yitrumam v'yitnaseh. Yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudesha b'richu. Li'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Damiran v'alma v'yimru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru, Amen. All right, please be seated. At this time, we'll hear some well-chosen words by our wonderful chapel president.
Short and sweet.
Only well chosen.
Only well chosen. I hope so. Good Shabbos, everyone. Good to see you, all of you. It's lovely to be here with you. Laura, hello. Roseanne and Howard, hello. Everyone at home, hello, and good Shabbos. November is going to be very exciting for us. Tomorrow after our service, Rabbi's going to have his class on.
Well, Hernette, we've done spirituality for a while. We did philosophy. Now we're back to psychology. And there's a therapist by the name of Susan Forward. And she came up with the idea, I mean, she didn't come up with it, but how to deal with emotional blackmail. I'm sure that everybody has been in that position at some point or other. And I'm sure we'll have plenty of stories to tell.
That's a good question.
That should be a good one. Really interesting. All Rabbi's classes are interesting, as are his classes on Wednesday night, 4:30, Adult Hebrew, 7 o'clock, Current Events. This Thursday at 10:30, Cantor Javier will be having his Ole Spanish class. It will be at 10:30 in the morning. We thought that this would be better timing because after the minyan and after a little coffee and breakfast, you'll be here and to take part in class. And his classes are delightful. We're blessed with both Rabbi and Cantor. Temple Shalom is very fortunate to have them both. This Sunday is the blessing of the animals at 10:30. Rabbi will be doing that. If you have a pet, bring the pet for a blessing. If you don't, you'd just like to see some adorable animals, please come. And we're also having a pet adoption at this a little bit after the blessing. So it's going to be a lovely event, and of course we need you at all of our events. There'll be cats and dogs. I know there's 3 dogs and 2 cats who need homes. I mean, really, yeah. So come take a peek anyway. Maybe you can't resist. November 17th. Thank you, Sonny. Dr. Murray Lichtenstein is going to do his lecture on words and the meaning of words. The meaning on the surface, the meaning underneath, and these are words that have to do with our tradition. And that will be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, of course, with coffee and cake. Gotta have that. What I'm very excited about telling you is that our mitzvah project for the children of Jeffco has begun. We got our first Barbie doll and our first bottle of nail polish. One of the little girls, all she wanted for Hanukkah was a bottle of pink nail polish. I have a list. I'm going to print them up, and you'll see the ages and names of the children. They have asked for such simple things: Play-Doh, crayons. I mean, your heart could break for them anyway, but their list is very simple, very affordable.
Where did these children are from? Where?
From Jeffco. They are our Jewish children, abused and neglected and now in care. Jeffco is a marvelous organization that takes care of our children. Whoever thought we would have abused Jewish children, neglected Jewish children? But we from Temple Shalom want them to have a beautiful Hanukkah, and I have the wish list. The list will be printed out on Monday. You can come in the office and get it. I think we'll put it online as well, and we're going to put up our big menorah. There are going to be little paper dreidels on it with the children's names and ages. If you want to get something else that's not on the list, of course, bring it, and we'll make a lovely delivery for those children for Hanukkah. Also, keep in mind, save the date of December 27th. I know it sounds like it's far away, but it's not. We are going to have a Hanukkah Shabbaton to celebrate Hanukkah and also to welcome our 14 new members of Temple Shalom. So we had a very successful high holidays. People felt our warmth, our caring, and it's the sweetest synagogue on the planet. So we have a lot to celebrate. I wish you all a sweet Shabbos, and we'll see you for coffee and cake after.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, that was wonderful.
I just want to give a little bit of history here. The point is, I mean, Jeffco is wonderful, but Jews have been caring for their orphans from time immemorial for as long as they did it in Europe. And I remember Dr. Janusz Korczak, who was in Czechoslovakia, for example. And you had the Israelite Orphans Home in New York City. And more recently, if you recall the names, Alan Sherman, for example, who was a humorous folk singer. He was in an orphanage for a while. So was Herbert Bloch, remember him? He was a political cartoonist back in the 60s and 70s, same thing. So it's sad, but I'm glad that these kids have someone they can trust and so on. Also in my pocket, because when the High Holy Days were looming, and I've moved most of my calendar stuff onto my phone, but I still like a paper calendar, and the people who came to my rescue, that's the General Israel Orphans Home for girls in Jerusalem. So what are you going to do? This is life. All right, well, thank you very much, and I wanted to say that I know we have a tradition of doing Jewish tunes, and I had made an arrangement some time ago my previous pulpit, you can use Broadway show tunes as long as they're written by Jews. So tonight we're going to salute Rodgers and Hammerstein. Sometime we could do Lerner and Lowe. That's 1.5 Jews. Fritz Lowe's father was Jewish. Okay, we can't do The Music Man because that's Meredith Willson. And Cole Porter wrote in a Jewish style, so we'll see about him. We're going to do Some Enchanted Evening on page 54. Okay, so you too can be Itzio Pinza or Brian something Mitchell. Okay. Adon Olam, Hashem Olam, B'Teren Kol Yitzivra, V'Nasa, V'Etzoko, Azai Melech Shimon Nikra, V'Yacharei Kiflot HaKol, Levado Imlom Torah, Vehu Haya, Vehu Hoveh, Vehu Yeh B'Tifara, Vehu Echad V'Yein Sheni, Ve'amshich Lo, Ve'achbira, Ve'li Reshit, Ve'li Tachlit, Ve'los Ve'hamesra, Ve'hu Eli, Ve'chai Goali, Ve'tzor Chavlei V'Yetzara, Ve'hu Nisi U'manosli, Ve'nat Kosi Ve'ekra, Ve'yado Afkid Ruchi, Ve'etisham Ve'ayra, Ve'imruchi, Ve'yati Adonai Ve'lo Ira. Okay, please rise for the closing benediction. Wait till we do guys and dolls. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Yo'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. The Lord turn his face unto you and grant you peace. We'll say amen.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom. Good Shabbos. Thank you so much.